Hello, so just want to give you some breaking news. We've just heard that the DOJ, Department of Justice, has basically opened a criminal investigation of the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. So this is some breaking news, and this is unprecedented for Jerome Powell, who's always seen as quite reserved individual. He never really goes out of his specific scope and remit as a Federal Reserve Chairman, but he's actually now come out on social media and basically announced what has happened and what his views are. And let's listen in.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people. Thank you.
So what's interesting here is that the criminal investigation into Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve, essentially it's what they're really basing this on is regarding the renovation to the Fed's historic office buildings in Washington, D.C. Yes? And what Fed chair basically is accusing the DOJ of threatening the criminal charges over the renovations, but because the central bank defied Trump's interest rate demands. So we know now, we've known that it's nearly been 1 year since Donald Trump has been in power as the president, and even prior to the nomination, he was a vocal person that really, as a proponent of decreasing interest rates. And this has really come to head over the last 9 months or so since he's been, actually nearly 12 months now. It's probably going to be January 20th will be his anniversary, where he's been the president, right? Second term. And he's been on top, continually pushing hard for the Federal Reserve to basically cut the interest rates. Now, what's interesting here and very important for you to take into consideration, the Federal Reserve essentially is an independent body within the government, right? It's not a body that's interwoven within the government, that anything the president will say or the vice president will say that the Federal Reserve will base that will utilize that information and then base on decisions. No, it doesn't work like that. They're an independent body. They're making decisions based on not the political pressures, but they're basing decisions on data, right? Understanding the monetary policy decisions, long-term economic health of the US, right? And then moving it on data. And this is what's really, really crucial. And then when you add to that, the current administration cannot blame anyone who actually appointed Powell. It was actually Donald Trump in the first term, right? Jerome Powell was actually sworn in as a chair February the 5th, 2018. That was Donald Trump's first term. So he actually he nominated him, he was confirmed, and then he was nominated to a second term by President Joe Biden. So the first term was nominated by Donald Trump. Second term was by Joe Biden. Yes. Now, what's crucial with this is that Jerome Powell has literally a few months. He's leaving in May, and then he's over as the Fed chair. So we're now going to hear some news as the next potential Fed chair that we're actually hearing is potentially between Kevin Hassett and Kevin Warsh. Now, they are both a strong proponent and advocate of decreasing interest rates because they believe this is going to fuel the economy and generate growth, right? But not actually understanding, yes, unemployment rate is starting to tick up. Inflation will probably also tick up, but then you have to look at what the labor is, yes? So based on this news, you can see what's happening there. Now, based on this situation, what's happening in the market? Because now this is flipping the whole coin upside down. You're seeing a situation where there's this ultimate control whereby it feels and it sees clearly that if independent bodies like this, if delegates, if politicians don't do as Donald Trump says or the White House administration says, then they'll do anything they can to be able to take control, whether this is via indictment, criminal investigations, whatever they can to put this pressure. Now, what's the impact on the markets based on this news? What you're clearly seeing here is that precious metals is this safe haven, right? When there's fear, when there's an element of the market is in a situation where potentially we're seeing that it's generally overbought, unemployment's ticking higher, AI bubble potentially could happen. What are people resorting to, right? There's this dystopian in the market based on all of the various things that's happening in the US, right? The lawlessness that's taking place. So what people are doing, people are now moving to safe haven assets such as silver. Silver's at all-time high, currently at $84 an ounce. We look at also gold. Gold is at all-time high, $4,500 an ounce. So we're seeing some massive moves. Silver's up 5% today, nearly 6%. Gold is up nearly 2%, right? You would possibly see that also people are looking at moving to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin hasn't really been trading well over the last few months or so. It actually topped out October at $126,000. And we are basically now at 90. We're holding just around these lows, above the lows of this 80 short-term low. So you would have seen potentially that so there would be some volatility, but that's not happening in terms of crypto. But it's really happening in precious metals. We'll wait to see what the market, when it opens in a few hours, what happens. But this is breaking news. Federal Reserve basically opened a criminal investigation into the Federal Reserve. The DOJ have opened a criminal investigation into the Federal Reserve and Jay Powell regarding the renovation projects, and that happened at the White House. This is historic. This is momentous. There's going to be some massive fallback that's going to happen. We need to monitor this carefully to see what's going to happen in the market. My views when I see this, short term, you'll probably see the US stock market will basically slide sharply, right, on the open. S&P 500, NASDAQ, Dow. You'll probably also see a weakness in the dollar, right, pricing the dollar weakness based on the monetary policies. As I said, safe haven gold, precious metals is now spiking higher. There'll be more volatility. But what this really matters here is, just to recap as a summary, this is actually putting a threat to the Federal Reserve as an independent body, right? We need, irrespective, we're investors. I'm invested heavily in real estate, invested in stocks and shares, invested in crypto. Yes, I want interest rates to be the lowest at all times, so it literally generates growth in the marketplace. It really increases the value of my investments. Yes, we want this, but we also want impartial. We don't want bias. We don't want conflict of interest, right? We want this independent body to stay true. And this is what it's been since the test of time. And I think this is going to be crucial. And if this goes through in terms of investigation and he's actually in charge and it goes through, then this is going to really cause havoc in terms of the democracy of what we see of America, right? Especially as a body, as a central bank. This is going to cause a lot of problems. So let's just see what happens. Keep an eye. If you like this information, please like, subscribe, comment. I'm just starting up this channel, so I would really love your support. And also, we're going to do a giveaway. So for the first, we're going to do a giveaway on those that comment. So the first 1,000 subscribers, you have a chance of winning $500. For the other 5 after that, you can be able to win $50. So if you want to be part of this potential this giveaway to receive some nice gula, some money, then please like, subscribe, and follow. Thank you.